And we are back. Welcome back to 1. This is episode. I'm apologizing for the abrupt end where the game crashed in episode 29. I'm gonna pick back up immediately where we left off. We had placed these for those where they needed to be. Now we can go ahead and continue on, but before we continue building on to those stages, we are going to go ahead and strut up the larger stages down here now to the upper stages, and we'll begin by radial aiding the struts from the S4 tank up to about here below the decoupler there, and then we're basically going to do that 2 more times right here to about there, and 1 more time on the opposite side from here up to pretty much the opposite side of where we placed that other one right there. And then we just need to check and make sure that all of those are connected. Looking good. And now we need to radial 4 to our engines up here. We'll begin by placing 4, say about here on the second reaction wheel, and we will connect it to the inner tip of the 4 outer stage mainsail engines there. And then we'll go down just a hair to the bottom reaction wheel, making sure that it is set to radial 4. And then we will place these on the outer part of the mainsail engines about there. That should take care of the strutting for that. We do just need to make absolutely sure that there is enough stability, so we're going to radial 8 again 3 times from the S3 tank this time, up as high as we can to this part of the central staging. So we'll place those there, and then we'll do that 2 more times, just like we did with the S4 staging or strutting. We'll place these on this end and strut those up to about here, and then do the same thing 1 last time on the opposite side about here. And it probably would help to get a little bit of music going to kill some of the silence in between doing all this. So after I place this, I'm going to hit play on that. And we're just going to make sure that all of those are connected. Looking good. Let's go back down here now and update our save file for the craft. Now we just need to set this central stage up to be able to push at least, I want to say, 800 tons worth, so it's going to have quite a bit of kilonewtons of thrust ability. We'll begin by placing a rhino down here, set to radial 1 and auto strutted to root part. Now with that knocks it down to only needing, say, about 600. So let's grab, well, if we take these and set 4 of those, that'll give us about 5,200, but we need 6,000. So let's grab the vectors. We'll place these at radial 4 for the engine mount tank there for 600 tons. We need to add maybe anywhere between 2 to 4 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It wouldn't hurt to go with 4, but I'm actually just going to go with 2, and I'm going to place those there. Not sure why my controller disconnected there. Alright, let's make sure all these are set to root part. Very good. We do also need to make sure that those are separated from the other engines on the stage above this. And set to decouple correctly into that. So as soon as we get those engines where they need to be, we'll find the decoupler. Make sure to place it where it needs to be. Okay, so there's the decoupler. Let's place it down here with these engines. Now the staging is correct. Let's update the save file. Then we need to build the outer stages here, which we will do by using the TT70 radial decouplers. We need to find the center of mass for this now, which is way up here. Okay, so we're just going to set these a little higher, say about up here, radial 2. Grab another set of these, rotate over and place those on the opposite side, and then after we get that, let's make sure that these are auto-strutted to grandparent part. Now, this stage should definitely be enough to get us on our way to the Joule system. And these should be enough to get us our encounter and begin our orbit, but we are still going to need a lot of that for the orbital descent down to land on Tylo. So we're going to have to add some more stages to the outside here, but we're not going to make them anything too extravagant. We're going to take these jumbos, we're going to triple those up, and then put some mainsails on them, and that should be enough. So let's place the radial 2 jumbos for the outer staging there, rotate over, make sure to place them in the same spot on the other side, and then we'll strut those up to grandparent part. Then after we have those strutted up to grandparent part, we'll copy it, put one down at the bottom, and then we'll copy it again, putting one up top. And then do the same thing to the other side. As soon as we get control, we can do that. There we go. And then after we have all of those placed, we will then put the mainsail engines on all 4 of those tanks. Place the first 2, set those to root on the auto strut, and then copy them. And take the copies, placing them on the other 2 outer stages. Now it's just a matter of asparagus staging and strutting. So we'll begin with the fuel lines. After we do finish these fuel lines, we do need to make sure to put some reaction control up at the top of these before we strut these up. And we just need to find a center point to put the fuel line on these outer stages, which should be, I want to say, about there. We'll just place that, say, a little bit off to the side like this. And we just need to set the fuel lines to the other 2 fuel tanks to lead into the other 2 outer fuel tanks, like so. We'll put one here, and lead it over to the opposite side, over here. And that is not radial 2ing correctly, so we'll have to grab it and do it again. Make sure to very carefully select the fuel line again. Let's try that one more time. Okay, now it's going to do it correctly. And to place that evenly, we're going to have to place it about here. So that takes care of our fuel lines for the asparagus staging. Now we just need to strut this beast up and then check the staging. But again, before we do put the struts on, we need to put the reaction control wheels on. So we'll set that up here, set to radial 1 at first. We'll place both of those there and make sure the top one is set to root and the bottom one is set to heaviest. After we get that done, keeping it on radial 1 just to make this a little simpler for ourselves, a little less hazardous to our frame rate. Let's grab the Rocco Max brand adapter 02, place that on top of this, and make sure it's set to auto strut to grandparent part. And now we can just take this, pick it up, and then set it to radial 2 after it gives us control of it back. There we go. Set it to radial 2, that way it'll set the radial 2 correctly this time. Let's grab it and copy it and place it on the other two outer stages. And now it's time to strut this up. We'll begin by putting some struts here to the outside, up to as far as we can get on this stage. As far up, there we go. And then go down, put one on the center, and with that center strut, we're going to place the strut up to below that strut there, and that top reaction wheel in the center stage relative to its location. Then we're going to put one more on the inside of that, and try to find a spot to move it up to that hopefully won't interfere with the engine. If it does, then we will just strut it to the center. Same thing to the other two outer stages. We'll just put this one here and strut it up as high as we can get on this one, which I believe should be about there. After we place those two, let's go back down and place one on the center like last one, or like the last one. We're going to put that one again below this, in between those, like the other two, and one on the inside, and strut it to the center of this engine as well, or at least as close to the center of it as possible. So say about there. That will take care of the upper strutting for now. Now we just need to actually strut the tanks themselves. We will begin by going radial 4 from the central stage at about here. Then we'll find a nice spot to place that on the outer stages on the inside, say about there. We're going to have to do this a few more times on the inside of it. We'll put radial 4, some struts here, and then find the center of the outer stages where they rotate, so about there. Let's go on down again, and we'll radial 4 from here directly over to the center point of the outer stages here. Then we just need to do the same thing to the bottom side. We'll start from the very bottom and radial forward from about there. After we do that, we'll find the central part of the inside of the tanks here, strut them there, move up a little higher, say up the top of this part of the tank, making sure to set it to radial 4 there, and strut those into the outer tanks as close to a center point as possible, about there. We'll place one more between that spot and where this decoupler is, but we did not set that to radial 4, so we're just going to place it randomly. We'll just place it there, and then grab it again and make sure to set it to radial 4 this time. It's getting really laggy again, but that's okay. We will finish this up. So that's set to radial 4. Now we just need to find a center point on this tank. That'll take care of our inner strutting. Now we just need to strut these tanks together. And we'll start from the bottom, pretty much basing it off of all the other struts that we have placed. We'll place these two here. Find out where the mouse went. There we go. Alright, and find a center point on this side. Should be about there. Raise it up a little bit more. Place it there. Hopefully the game doesn't crash again when we're finishing this. Okay, now let's place these out here. Go to the other side. It's definitely being a little testy on that frame rate right now, but we'll get past it. I'll put these, say, about here. Rotate until it gives us control back. There we go. Try to anyways. As soon as we find our mouse, then we can place these here. Go to the other side and do it again. Then we'll do it up top. Where that adapter tank actually reaches the S4 tank. Just rotate on over to the other side. Of course we lose control of the mouse again, so now we are waiting to find out where it went. There it is. Okay. And then after we get that done, we just need to do it again to the other side, and then one more time hopefully, and that will be it. Keeping an eye on the decoupler, watching for it to rotate smoothly, then I'll know I have control again. And let's go up here. Or wait, no, we're supposed to do one more on this other side. That's right. So let's place that there. Slowly moving the right stick until I have smooth control again. Still not smooth, still laggy, still laggy. There we go. Okay, now let's place that there. We'll put one more up top, and then we'll be done, hopefully. And we can place the stability enhancers for launching, and get this thing on its way to Tylo. Place it. We just have one more to do. It should be, at least. as it lets me place this one. There we go. Just waiting to see that rotate smoothly now. As soon as it is, we'll place these last ones. Alright, now let's place this one here on the opposite side. And waiting to gain control. This will put us at 421 parts, but we're not quite done yet. Just gotta check our staging and make sure that the launch stability enhancers are attached to the vessel and staged correctly as well. We're going to put those centered with the center of mass there on the outer stages. Alright, so let's place those now. Put the first two here. And then we'll click in a couple times and rotate over after grabbing it again, placing the other two here, and that should be that. We have our 1,173.6 ton Tylo vessel. Now we just need to make sure it's staged correctly. We will first separate these decouplers from those engines there, as soon as it gives us total control, without flinging the mouse out beyond ELU. Just keeping an eye on our kerbals down there until they're trotting away without any frame rate drop. There we go. Let's add another stage, wait for the kerbals. Should be buffed out here in a second. There we go. Now let's drag these down to there. And then the long, arduous process of moving those engines there on stage 9 down to stage 12 after we regroup these decouplers once we regain control. There we go. Let's move all these down here and regroup those. Put these down here, regroup those, and move this one down to the very bottom. Now let's check our staging. Those will go off. Very good. Make sure that the decoupling is correct. That one's good, that one's good. You can get rid of that. That'll go into those. Those are set to decouple correctly. Going into those, which will decouple correctly. And at that point, we are coming home. So let's save our craft. And then let's make sure the correct kerbals are set up to be piloting this. Of course they are not, even though we had that saved. Let's get Azalea in there, Millman in there, and Helwig in there. Come on, Helwig. There you go. Alright, let's save the craft one more time, and we will head back to the Space Center. So that craft is ready to go. It's time to launch, get ourselves into orbit around the Mun, make our transfer to the Joule system, and set up the encounter with Tylo, make orbit, and then land this thing. And we'll see just how over-engineered it is. Because we did make a 60-ton lander, and it did need a proper descent stage to de-orbit down to the surface. So here's hoping for the best. Once we get our Space Center loaded up here, we will head to the tracking station, get rid of some debris, and set up our transfer window. But before we do that, let's update our quick save so we don't lose any of that progress again. Alright, now let's head to the tracking station. And I now have a little under an hour to do this, so depending on how long this takes, we may or may not do the landing in this episode. We may have to wait a little while for another episode after this. Alright, this Probidyne station on Gilly can go. It's definitely outlived its purpose. And now we can just get rid of this debris. There's probably a good bit of debris collected up at this point now. So you may want to go ahead and skip ahead while I get rid of this if you are watching after the stream. We're almost there now. Then we just have to set up our transfer. Just a few more of these to go. Kind of wondering about that KSS3 debris. That was a bit unusual. There shouldn't have been any debris left from that. So now we're down to 4. And 3. 2. Last one. Okay, now we can set up our joule transfer window. Let's see how big of an issue that will be. Not a whole lot. Let's go ahead and do that now. And because that station is around Tylo, it is losing contact with the relay network more often now, but that's okay. And that should be our window there. So let's go ahead and close the time warp and make sure that the MUN is where it should be, which it practically is already, which is pretty fantastic. Let's leave the tracking station and try to launch this thing and see what happens. It's quite the creation. One of the larger vessels that I've made personally, and definitely the largest one that we've done for the series so far. It's getting a little bit advanced now, but we are at episode 11. Should be able to play ball by now. Let's get rid of our current kerbals there. And go back over and set it to launch from the MUN. Say $1.9 million. No. Say $562,945 vessel. It's cheaper than all the KSS's we've launched, I think, perhaps. I'm not sure. They looked longer in the digits there, but it might be from the decimal, which is unnecessary because there was a 0 after it, but I digress. Let's launch this thing and get it the joule and get it around Tylo. Have about 50 minutes or so to spare to do this. We should be able to land it, hopefully, or at least attempt to. We'll find out how that goes. We are not docking it with the station around Tylo. That won't be necessary, so there's that. It's pretty much just a straight rendezvous to Tylo this time, which will be a lot easier on us, including the Delta V. One thing we should have done was put a docking port on some of these, so we could dock back up with them if we had to, but it don't matter. We'll just work with what we have. Now, before we launch this, let's extend the solar panels and the communitrons on it. After we get all those highlighted, we'll do that. Just got one more Communitron left to get highlighted. Now let's extend all those. So far it looks pretty stable on the launch pad, but then again we are on the MUN, so it should, because there's like almost no gravity. And all of those have been extended. Looks like we're good to go. It's a bit of a beast of a vessel there, isn't it? Alright, let's activate the SAS and throttle up just a hair. And let's launch this thing. Give it a second to load up. And once it hits, it's gonna hit. Because there's plenty of thrust to wait. There it goes. Not bad on the frame rate now that it's launched. Let's go ahead and throttle up to full throttle. So it's about 50 meters per second. We'll go to the 90-degree mark on our nav ball, staying at a 90-degree inclination. Just let that raise up to about 100, and then we'll go all the way over. Not all the way, say about to the 20 mark. Once we gain enough altitude and it's safe enough to do it, we'll go completely sideways, like so. Once we are there, we'll lock our SAS. So far, so stable. That's a good sign. Let's check our map out. That FOS is highlighted so we can keep an eye on it. It's on its way. We'll probably have to stage once before we get in orbit around the moon, most likely. As our main cell stage is feeding quite a few engines there in that central stage. Let's go ahead and check our FOS again. It's almost to 10,000, but we're trying to push it out to 50,000. 4 seconds of delta V left on that one. Once we notice that drop, I think it just did, we'll cut the engines. Alright, time to stage. Let's go ahead and stage those first two main cell stages. Then boost ahead a little bit to get away from those here in just a moment. As soon as it gives us control of the vessel again, if it doesn't crash, should be fine. We're losing parts and mass. It should improve it little by little as we go. So it's already buffed the staging, now it's just got to load the visual staging itself. There it goes. Let's try to get away from those as quickly as we can. Then cut the engine. Check our periaps or apoapsis. Okay, so it's time to go back to full throttle. Check out our apoapsis. It's about halfway there. Let's continue. Should get there relatively quick now. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Say we should definitely be above 5,000 meters. We are. So let's go ahead and time warp close to the periapsis, but not too close so it can rotate. Let's give it about 30 seconds to do that, maybe. There's about 45 seconds, that should be okay. you probably want to make sure that it's set to prograde by the time we get there too, right? There we go. Let's say by the time it hits the radial out mark there, it should be time to let it go ahead and reach over to the prograde mark. We'll just let it go ahead and do that. Should have plenty of reaction control ability to handle that. Giving it plenty of time to be able to finish doing so as well. But while it's doing that, we may as well take advantage of the moment and find Joule and set it as our target. Looks like we don't currently have any connectivity with it. That's okay, we don't really need it just yet. We are perfectly in line there. Let's see where the mun is. We might have to make an orbit or two, but that's okay. Let's get back zoomed in down on our apoapsis. We're getting close to needing to burn. Definitely can't wait to ditch some of the weight and staging on this vessel so we can have a little more control. Let's go ahead and throttle up now. Get it over there a little quicker. And then full thrust until we see that wrap around. And we will cut thrust. Check our periapsis out, make sure it's above 50,000, looking good. Alright, now it's time to just make a couple orbits. There's one. Looks like this is going to be the one right here, so let's cut it about there. And let it reorient back to prograde or closer to it. Give it a little bit of time to do that. Actually, let's go ahead and set it up to where it has enough time to reorient to prograde and is ready to burn once it reaches prograde, so let's say about there. Now, once it reorients to prograde, it'll be time to burn, so we don't have to deal with doing that more than once. We just need to give it about 50 seconds or so to orient back to the prograde mark, and we will begin the transfer. In the meantime, let's see what this looks like. Okay, so it's on the dark side. That's not great for visuals, but it's better than staring at the map, I guess. You can see all those struts, at least. A majority of them. Almost pointing prograde now, about halfway there. Should be able to get a good track on that target mark, which we can. It will be the ideal time to burn. Let's go ahead and thrust up a little bit so it can orient to the prograde a little more easily. Thrust up a little bit more to give it a little more control. There it goes. And now having a bit of a hard time. But not too hard of a time, I think it'll be okay. Strut it up well enough, should be fine. Just let it keep burning. We're gonna keep an eye on those mainsail stages before we check the map again though, as soon as those cut off stage. Stage. Let's go ahead and do that and then throttle back up a little bit. Shouldn't take nearly as much as it did last time to do this, hopefully. We staged the other two mainsail stages. Just waiting. There we go. Let's try to move away from those now. Hopefully with relative ease. Very good. Okay. Now it should be a little easier to control this thing as we continue on. It's mostly because of the gimbling on those vectors that it kind of wants to wobble and toss and turn so much. Let's go back to our map here. We'll know when this stage is done because we'll hear quite a few bangs. We do have quite a bit of delta V on this stage still. See just how much we do have. 1800, so enough to get us up to about 3,500 meters per second. Which I doubt we'll need it to reach that point. Just to make it a little jolt. I need to take manual control and push it out ahead of the prograde marker a little bit. I think it's actually maintaining itself quite well because of its little bubble somehow. Let's look at the vessel. It's a beast. Not as many vector engines as we had on the last one though, but we did have the 4 outer mainsail stages to compensate for this 60-ton lander that we're taking up there. Once it reaches out beyond Drez, it should be picking up distance faster and faster at that point. It's still staying relatively in line with that target mark, amazingly. Let's go ahead and focus on control and rotate around so we can keep a better eye on this. Let's check our staging. Our delta V, pretty good. We should still have enough to set up the Tylo rendezvous and begin an orbital burn around Tylo, which is what we were after, because the next stage is going to be for deorbiting and hopefully a safer landing there on Tylo. We're getting close to being pulled into Joel's sphere of influence on our trajectory now. And prepare to cut the engine very slowly so we don't lose our lock on the prograde. And we have the encounter, now we just need to warp out of the Mun sphere of influence so we can see where that encounter is. Okay, now we can check that out. Not as much to have to deal with as previous launches. Let's get out of Kerbin's sphere of influence and warp about halfway to Joule or so. Maybe not halfway, but at least out to about here. We'll go with that and prepare to bring our periapsis down to be in line with Tylo, which we will now set as our target. And we need to make sure its orbital line is flush with itself and where we can see the periapsis. Once we have that, we will point, I suppose, normal, and try to bring that down. Only bad thing is it's taking so long to move this thing, but after we get rid of that nice stage there, it should be a lot easier. Oh, we didn't put any reaction control wheels on the top of these, so it may not be as easy. It might be a little easier at least. Once we're relatively close to the normal mark, we'll begin boosting up a little bit to give it more control to be able to lock onto it a little more easily, and then we'll see how that affects it. In fact, it may be better to time warp a little bit to get it to freeze on that spot, and then disable the time warp and take it from there, but we'll find out. Looks like it's going there smoothly enough. Can kind of start to begin burning a little bit just to see. Yeah, it's going to raise it, so see, it's strange how it does that. Sometimes it'll have to be normal, sometimes it'll have to be anti-normal, and I'm not sure why outside of spheres of influence. Like if you're around the Mun, it's going to be different, of course, than it would be transferring from Kerbin, but solar orbit should always be the same, and I'm not sure why it's not. But I digress. We'll wait for it to move on over the anti-normal and we'll take it from there. Still have close to a half hour to do this. Hopefully it won't be a cliffhanger again. It's almost a quarter of the way now. Just wish it wouldn't take so long. Wish there was a way to time warp your nav ball. But we can watch the vessel do its thing in the meantime at least. Albeit very slowly due to the lack of power. Let's deactivate the SAS, time warp a little bit, let it fill those batteries back up, and then resume control. Okay, we'll cancel it there, reactivate the SAS, go back to locking on to anti-normal. We'll just enjoy the view as it does that, I guess. Check out our power. Okay, it's about halfway down now, but it is swiftly approaching the anti-normal mark. to begin that burn, need to make sure that our Tylo's orbital line here is nice and flush with itself, like so. So that once we reach that anti-normal mark, we can bring the periaps down to its level. Starting to run out of power though. Might be time to go ahead and throttle up just a hair. Try to counterbalance that some. There we go. Let's let it do its thing until it's nice and flush with that line. Or at least as close to flush with it as possible. 3, 2, 1. Kick it. And now we just need to try to bring that ascending node down a little bit beyond our periaps, like so. And then we can try to, after we regain some power real quick, we'll try to bring that periaps into the system a little closer. Let's turn our SES back on, and if I'm not mistaken, we just need to point prograde. So we'll let that reorient to prograde now. Probably should have added more electrical charge reserves than those 4 battery tanks, or battery banks, but that's okay. Doesn't really matter that much. Let's try to get a beat on Tylo's orbit. It's roughly 62 million over there, so it should be close to 62 million over here as well, one would think. It's not always the case, but that's what we're going with. Once we are locked on to prograde though, it'll be time to try to bring that in. If I'm not mistaken, prograde should do the trick. If not, we might have to do radial out. Again, thrusting a little bit. Looking good. Again, we're aiming for about 62.5 million. Right about there. It's not bad. Maybe easier just to go ahead and force that encounter. We could try. May not end as well as we want it to, depending on the ascending node, which I don't think it is. Let's just go ahead and take what we have and warp on over to the periaps, or close to at least, and be prepared to point retrograde upon arrival. We have 600 meters per second of delta V to use on the beginning of the orbital burn here with that stage, which will then lead us to these 4 outer stages surrounding that central stage, and we're going to need some of that to deorbit at Tylo as well. So hopefully we don't use all that, and we eyeballed the math up enough to be able to pull it off. If not, these Kerbals are going to be stuck, if they even have the luck of landing on Tylo. But we should be fine. I have faith in it. Don't usually fail too often. Try not to, at least. Now it's just pretty much a matter of waiting until we finally get out to the Joule system here in a few minutes or so. In the meantime, I guess we could just admire the vessel. Actually, I'm going to cancel the time warp if I can, so I can get some power back in this thing. So I'm not seeing it getting any power at all. which I doubt it's really even going to get the chance to get any power until it gets there. The direction that it's facing. And maybe try to rotate it or something. Throttle up a little bit and try to move it some. See just how much that affected us there. Wow, that brought us in quite a bit. Gonna have to correct that once we get to the Joule system. It's gonna be a little bit of a waste, but oh well. Once it's at a good enough place to start getting power, we'll finish our time warp, so I don't want it losing power again. Alright, so that's almost good enough. We'll take it to the edge of Joule's system and take it from there once we get there. And without the SAS on, it shouldn't be too much of an issue keeping power now. So we'll always have that one solar panel pointing there towards the sun at least. Now it's just a matter of waiting a couple minutes until we get to the Joule system, and then we can correct our periapse once we get there and make this encounter happen. But I've only got about 20 minutes left to do so, and hopefully we can make this happen. While your Kerbal is having an inventory, that's probably because you downloaded the Breaking Ground expansion, which gives them an inventory slot, so that you can then use these parts up here that we have in the lander. Inside of this cargo storage unit, there are the Breaking Ground modules, and you can place those into your Kerbal's inventory. So you can place them on the surface of various locations. Did you get the DLC with it as well? It may be a part of a patch to include the inventory, but you'd still probably have to get the Breaking Ground DLC in order to use that inventory slot with the parts that you can deploy on the surface of various worlds that you have to take out of the cargo and put into the inventory of the Kerbal to be able to place it. So that the inventory slot might still be there anyways without the DLC. Because they probably added the inventory slot in a recent update, either to prepare for Breaking Ground or just to add it. That's no problem. I'd definitely recommend getting the DLC, especially the Making History DLC for the Mun Launchpad and tons of new parts, new engines. Like these larger tanks down here, and some of the other engines that are on this probably somewhere. And of course the Mun Launchpad that we launched from. It makes things so much easier and allows you to launch much larger vessels. It's pretty useful. But again, so is the Breaking Ground. You'll have robotic parts and a way to use that inventory slot with the Breaking Ground science modules and so on. Adds more flavor to the game, more to do, more contracts, more surface features like little crystals that you can scan with rover arms, rocks that you can pick up and bring back home, or rocks that you can scan, some geysers, a lot of other stuff I'm not going to spoil though. Even adds trees to the surface of Kerbin. Just really interesting surface features on every world. except for one. There's one that I haven't seen surface features on yet. I can't remember which world that was. Very cool. Very worth it too. And they definitely deserve the support, because they're going to continue working with KSP1 even after KSP2 comes out, with a separate team doing the work for KSP2 and a separate team continuing the work with KSP1. So it's going to be kind of like playing KSP1 for more grounded, realistic rockets and stuff, and then KSP2's gonna have that, like, more of the same, but also more futuristic tech as well. So you can always go back to KSP1 for more like modern stuff, and KSP2 for more futuristic and interstellar spaceflight and colonizing and so on. It'll be fun to jump back and forth between both still, whenever that's released. We should be getting relatively close to Joule now, about a minute away. So we're already passing its orbital line, so now after we hit the apoapse, we'll start to descend back towards Joule and wrap ourselves into its sphere of influence. And once we do, we'll correct our periapse out to Tylo's orbital line, and then warp over to it and make orbit and make the encounter happen. Unless we can go ahead and make the encounter happen once we reach the edge of Joule there. Really just depends on the power that we have stocked up in our battery banks. Since I did not put too many of those in there, and that's not holding much, and we have to kind of rely on the engines a little bit, which isn't very good, because you activate the engines, you're going to mess with your orbital line, so we'll just see how it goes once we get there. Might end up wasting a little bit of Delta V, but it'll be okay. One way or the other, we'll make it happen. We always do. We are now down to 15 minutes or so left on the clock. Really won't be able to extend this episode beyond an hour and 20 minutes. Or won't be able to extend it more than 20 minutes past the hour mark of the intended time for these episodes. Do I have a base on this planet? I haven't put any bases on any of the Joule system worlds just yet. I have a colony on Eve and a bunch of space stations around the Kerbal system, like a space station around Gilly, I think, unless we brought that back with us last time, and a space station around Ike, which is the moon around Duna, and we do have a space station around Tylo, which is where we're heading now, and you can see it cutting on and off in the communication line. We have a very small space station around Tylo, and we have a space station around Kerbin as well, but only one base, one HAB unit, and that's landed on Eve right now. So we're about 30 seconds away from entering Joule's sphere of influence, I'd say now. On other files, I've pretty much colonized all over the place. I've colonized one of my favorite places, the really dark blue moon close to Joule here, Lathe. It's one of my favorite places to colonize. Colonizing Eve is fun if you plan to stay there once you get there. It's not very easy to leave Eve. Colonizing Duna is fun. Colonizing moons I'm not really as interested in. I like the atmospheric planets for colonizing. Otherwise I'll go out to the moons and maybe refuel, do some mining, and set up some mining stations around the moons, so you can go there whenever you need to refuel if one happens to be along the way. Otherwise, just kind of land on the moons and get those missions over with and move on to the more planetary bodies or atmospheric moons. Alright, so now we are here. It's time to try to set ourselves up to where these panels can get a little juice, start to rotate. Once the panels are oriented more correctly to where I can start getting more power, I'll time warp ahead a little bit until the power bank is full. There we go. Time to let that charge back up a little bit. It's not going to charge up too fast because we are pretty far away from the sun, but it'll charge up fast enough, hopefully. And there we go. Alright, now it's time to try to point radial out, which isn't too far from where we are now, at least. Once we hit radial out, we can move our periapse out some, try to get this encounter zeroed in. Actually, burning radial out should take that straight to where it needs to be if we're lucky. Huh, that'll be useful. Hopefully we have enough power to get that over to radial out so we can do that. Once it's close enough though, we're just going to go for it. Again, the gravitational influence of Tylo is pretty high, so it won't take a whole lot to be grabbed up by it. But we need to try to make it accurate. Where's our solar panel placement once we're pointing radial out? Right towards the sun. That's fantastic, because we're going to need that energy flow. Don't want to come across that problem again if we can help it. So we're pretty close now. Let's go ahead and begin burning radial out. Until it's nice and in line there with Tylo. Oh, look at that. There's our encounter. Okay, let's deactivate the SAS so we can try to hold on to as much of this power as possible. We can begin time warping, but first let's do a quick save to update that so we don't lose this progress. The Tylo periapsis is pretty high up, but that's okay, we'll work with it. Let's just go ahead and get our butts over there. Let's see, that's 53 days and about 2 hours to the periapse. That'll be alright, let's warp there. Just want to make sure that we keep those batteries charged until we can get rid of this stage. And then it won't take as much power to do as much moving around. There's Tylo. How you doing, Tylo? Alright, let's activate our SAS. Go to retro. And as we point retro, we should be pointing more towards the sun, which will be good. Because I believe the sun is on the other side of Tylo, the opposite end. Pretty close, maybe. Depends on our orientation to Tylo, I guess. We're almost polar. It's not very ideal. But once we lose this stage, we can finagle it a little bit. It'll be alright. Once we are pointing closer to retro, we will go ahead and warp over to that periapsis, though. Let that energy restock itself a little bit, and we're close enough to it. Let's go ahead and begin our throttling up. we have about 500 meters per second of delta V. Let's go ahead and go full throttle. Try to get this orbit started, at least. It's not exactly the best encounter, but we're going to work with it since we had to. Take it since we're here. And since we only have about 10 minutes now until I have to cut this off, at least we can make orbit. I'm starting to lose a little bit of control of the vessel here. It's throttled down. Just let it continue to burn until this stage is done, so we can gain better control after we get rid of this stage because of the vectors and all their gimbling. Should be done in about 5 to 10 seconds, I'd say. How's that orbit looking? Still not wrapping around entirely just yet. Alright, it is time to stage, so we can stop using so much power. Once we activate these 5 mainsails, we'll be getting plenty of power. Just waiting. There we go. Let's pull away from that before chaos happens. Alright, let's kick the fire. Or kick the tires and light the fires. Now, where is Tylo? It should be right below us. Big rock. Full of mass. Gravitational force. That would be a very bad time for this to crash. Okay, thank God. Now we're just waiting. Keeping an eye on our stage. Just go ahead and let that burn. Go back to the map view. And throttle down, stage. Waiting to gain control. The park count on that lander is totally killing it. There we go. Let's throttle away from those. And go full throttle. Let's see. Okay, it's going to very quickly start to make orbit with these 2 stages, I would say. If it wasn't polar, it wouldn't be so bad, but well. Definitely recommend going more equatorial. It's a lot easier. I hope I didn't tune these curls because of that. And we should have orbit right about now. Okay. So, wonder how much delta V it'll take us to correct our line here. So we're going ahead and warp down to about here. And then we will point normal. And pointing normal should be, yeah, okay, so we can just point normal, begin to raise the apoapsis back up, or at least attempt to. Or we can just try to make a polar orbit. It's not recommended. Let's go ahead and see how much delta V this is going to take. Not much at all. Okay. So let's just let that burn until it's, I want to say pointing north. It should be within the next 28 to 30 seconds. It's going to waste a little bit of delta V, but it'll be worth it. Finish off these stages on the outside here, just to realign this thing's orbit correctly. Let's cut it there, and then point ourselves back to retrograde. Now that we have corrected ourselves and are equatorial again, we can reduce this down to about 50,000. Once it hits 50,000, we'll take it from there. It's not going to be very easy to land, but we'll give it a shot. It is time to stage though, isn't it? So let's go ahead and do that. Let's just re-highlight these and begin to continue deorbiting there. Begin at about 75 or so. Let's go ahead and update our quick save now. Only have a few minutes to wrap this up, so we're just going to make the orbit for now. And then in the next episode we'll do the landing. Got about 4 minutes left, and I'm gonna have to cut this off and prepare to call it quits for the day. So we should be able to at least finish this orbit, and that'll be good for now. Okay, now that we are pointing retro, let's begin a retro burn to reduce the apoapsis down to about 72,000 or so. Hopefully there's enough delta V in the stage to do that. I was really hoping to use it to deorbit with enough thrust to weight, but oh well. Even all the stuff that we put on this was not enough to do that, I suppose. But it looks like the thrust to weight's okay here on the other engines that we have, so it should be alright, I suppose. So let's see where we are on our orbital line now. It's down to the 700,000s. Not bad. As long as there's enough to make orbit, I think we'll be okay, at least for landing and reorbiting Tylo. We'll have to send something out to rescue the Kerbals, though, probably. We won't be able to make it home with just this, I'd say. Let's warp on over to Periaps from this side now, and try to finish off making that a stable, even orbit. With only about a minute to spare, just in time. Maybe. Hope I don't get cut off sooner. If I get a phone call, it'll cut it. I'm waiting on a phone call. And that'll be it for the day for me. Alright, let's bring that down now. Let's warp a little closer to that periaps and bring it down. Here we go. Alright, so we have our orbit. Now we just need to land in the next episode. And it looks like we can just land right about here on our way around. So that'll be good. How much Delta V do we have left in this stage? So I am going to test this since I'm not going to be able to play again for a little while. But overall there's 4,838. That should be enough to land and make orbit. Hopefully. Guess we'll find out in the next episode. But for now, thank you for watching. Hope you've been enjoying. Hope it's been helpful. Hopefully we can knock out this very difficult contract in the next episode. And until next time, goodbye.